For 3 long decades, Sofia lived in a marriage that felt more like a prison than a home. Her husband, Mark, had once promised her love and protection. But as the years passed, the absence of children became a wound that never healed. Sofia tried everything: endless doctor visits, treatments, prayers, whispered late at night, but every attempt ended in disappointment. Instead of comforting her, Mark grew colder with each passing year, reminding her constantly that she had failed as a wife. Family gatherings were painful, relatives whispered behind her back, neighbors pitied her, and Mark's scornful glances cut deeper than any words. Sofia buried her sorrow in silence, believing that patience and loyalty might someday win back his affection. But love never returned. By the time she turned 53, her marriage had withered into nothing more than two strangers sharing a roof. One ordinary morning, Mark placed a stack of divorce papers on the dining table. His voice carried no emotion, only sharp finality. "You are nothing but a burden, Sofia." The words echoed in her ears like a death sentence. Her hands trembled as she realized that 30 years of sacrifice had been erased in a single moment. Without another glance, Mark forced her out of the house that had once been her only refuge. Alone, carrying nothing but the clothes on her back, Sofia wandered the streets aimlessly. The world blurred around her as grief consumed her heart. She had no destination, no family to turn to, and no reason to keep walking. Under the weight of despair, her body gave out. She collapsed onto the cold pavement, unnoticed by the busy world rushing past. When Sofia awoke, the sterile white ceiling of a hospital greeted her. Disoriented, she thought perhaps it was her final resting place. But then the doctor entered with an expression of disbelief and cautious joy. Gently, he told her the words she never imagined she would hear. "Mrs. Sofia, you are 6 weeks pregnant." At first, she thought it was a cruel joke, but the doctor's voice was steady, and the ultrasound image before her eyes confirmed the impossible. Tears streamed down her cheeks as her heart swelled with emotions she hadn't felt in years: hope, fear, wonder. After 30 years of emptiness and ridicule, life had given her a miracle. In that fragile heartbeat flickering on the screen, Sofia found a reason to live again. With trembling hands clutching her hospital papers, Sofia made her way back to the house she had been forced to leave. Despite all the pain and humiliation Mark had caused her, her heart clung to one fragile hope: that the miracle growing inside her might change everything. Perhaps, she thought, if Mark knew she was carrying his child, his hardened heart would soften. Perhaps 30 years of bitterness could be redeemed by this single spark of life. But when she pushed open the gate, what she saw shattered her soul. The house was glowing with lights, music, and laughter. Guests in elegant clothes filled the yard, glasses of champagne in hand. Sofia's breath caught in her throat as she stepped closer. Her heart pounded, whispering that it must be some mistaken, till her eyes fell on the sight she would never forget. Mark stood at the altar in a tailored suit, smiling with a joy she had not seen in decades. And beside him, dressed in white lace, was Julia, Sofia's closest friend, the woman who had shared her secrets, her pain, her deepest fears. Julia's hand was entwined with Mark's as the guests clapped and cheered. Sofia froze. The betrayal cut twice as deep by her husband and by her friend. Every word of comfort Julia had ever given her now twisted into poison. Every smile had been a mask hiding treachery. Unable to bear the sight, Sofia turned away, pressing her hand protectively against her stomach. In that moment, she swore that no one, not Mark, not Julia, not even the world, would know about the child she carried. This baby was hers alone, a secret treasure she would guard with her life. But the nightmare was not over. Days later, Sofia overheard whispers in town that made her blood run cold. People offered her condolences, speaking of how poor Sofia had passed away and how tragic her death had been. Confused and horrified, she demanded answers. That was when the truth came crashing down. Mark had told everyone, including his own father, that Sofia was dead. Not only had he spoken the lie, he had gone so far as to stage a funeral, complete with a coffin, flowers, and mourners dressed in black. While Sofia had been fighting for her life in the hospital, Mark had buried her in the eyes of the world. The realization crushed her. She was not just abandoned, she had been erased. To Mark, her 30 years of loyalty meant nothing. He had killed her existence with a single lie, replacing her with Julia as though she had never lived at all. Standing alone in the darkness, Sofia felt despair closing in. Yet when she laid her hand on her belly, a faint flutter reminded her she was not truly alone. Inside her grew the one truth Mark could never erase, a life that would one day expose his cruelty. Once Sofia realized she had been erased from her old life, She had no choice but to disappear into the shadows. With no family to turn to, and no money to survive, she wandered from place to place, offering to clean, wash dishes, or carry heavy loads just to earn a few coins. Some nights she found shelter in cheap motels, but most nights she curled up on cold benches, clutching her belly and whispering prayers to the child within her. As her pregnancy grew heavier, her world became harsher. Strangers sneered at her ragged clothes, shopkeepers drove her away, and passers-by treated her as though she were invisible. Yet every time despair threatened to crush her, Sofia would press her hands against her swollen stomach and remind herself, "You are my miracle, my reason to keep going." By the time winter arrived, she had lost even the smallest comfort of a bed. Sofia found herself beneath a crumbling bridge on the outskirts of the city, where broken bottles and rainwater surrounded her. The nights were bitterly cold, and hunger gnawed at her bones, but she wrapped her threadbare coat tightly round her belly, whispering lullabies to the unborn child, promising a better life someday. Then, one stormy night, the promise was put to the test. Lightning tore across the sky as rain poured in sheets, flooding the ground beneath the bridge. Sofia's body convulsed with pain unlike anything she had ever known. Her time had come. With no one to help, no doctor, no midwife, she stumbled into an abandoned concrete shelter nearby, her cries drowned by the thunder. Hours passed in agony as Sofia fought for her life and for the tiny life struggling to enter the world. Her hands shook as she gripped the damp floor, her voice hoarse from screaming, her body weakened from months of hunger. But then, through the storm, a cry pierced the night, a fragile, trembling sound that carried more power than the roaring thunder above. Her child was alive. Sofia cradled the newborn against her chest, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. The baby's tiny fists clenched around her finger, as though refusing to let her go. She named him Lucas, though, in her heart, she also whispered Samuel, meaning, "God has heard," because she truly believed only a miracle could have brought him into the world that night. But from that moment on, Lucas became the center of her existence. The hunger, the cold, the humiliation, none of it mattered anymore. She had a reason to fight, to endure, to hope. For the next 2 years, mother and son lived in hiding. They slept under bridges, in abandoned warehouses, in the corners of train stations, where no one would notice them. Sofia worked tirelessly at odd jobs, saving every coin to buy milk, bread, and second-hand clothes for Lucas. At night, she sang him lullabies while the wind howled through the cracks of their shelter. She shielded him with her body when the winter frost bit hard, whispering promises that one day, life would be different. Meanwhile, Mark and Julia lived in luxury, entertaining guests in the house that had once been Sofia's. Their laughter echoed in brightly lit halls while Sofia and Lucas shivered in the darkness. But even in her suffering, Sofia held onto one truth. Mark's lies had stolen her place in the world, but they could never steal the love she carried for her son. And as she watched Lucas grow, his eyes bright with innocence, Sofia felt a quiet strength building inside her. Though the world had abandoned her, she was no longer the weak woman cast aside. She was a mother, and she would fight for her child no matter the cost. The rain poured mercilessly that night, drumming against the concrete bridge like 1,000 angry fists. Sofia sat curled against the damp wall, cradling Lucas tightly against her chest. The boy, now 2 years old, was pale and shivering. His breaths came shallow and ragged, each one tearing at her heart. She had no medicine, no food, no warmth, only her desperate embrace to shield him from the storm. Sofia pressed her lips to his damp forehead and whispered, "Hold on, my little one, please, hold on." Her tears blended with the rain. She felt powerless, terrified that the miracle she had been given was slipping through her arms. Then, through the curtain of rain, the low growl of an engine broke the silence. A sleek black luxury car slowed to a stop near the bridge, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Sofia instinctively pulled Lucas closer, her body tense with fear. She had grown used to being chased away, scorned, treated like a vagrant. The car door opened, and a tall figure stepped into the downpour. His silver hair gleamed under the streetlight, his coat billowing in the wind. Sofia's breath caught in her throat as recognition struck. Mr. Sterling, Mark's father. Her heart pounded wildly. He wasn't supposed to see her. To him, she was dead. Mark had buried her with lies, and she had been too broken to fight back. Now, here she was, ragged and trembling, clutching the grandson he never knew existed. Mr. Sterling froze when his eyes met hers. For a long, unbearable moment, neither of them moved. The rain fell harder, but it could not drown the shock in his face. His lips parted, his voice trembling. "Sofia, but you," his words choked off, and tears filled his eyes. He staggered forward, staring at her as if afraid she might vanish if he blinked. Then his gaze dropped to the frail child in her arms. The boy's eyes, though weak and feverish, carried the unmistakable Sterling bloodline. The dreadful truth crashed upon him: his own son, Mark, had deceived him, had deceived everyone. He had buried Sofia alive in lies, stolen her dignity, and denied him the chance to know his true heir. With a cry torn from the depths of his soul, Mr. Sterling fell to his knees in the mud before her. The powerful patriarch, feared and respected by all, humbled himself in the filth of the streets. His hands trembled as he reached out, not daring to touch the child until Sofia gave a small nod. "Lucas," she whispered, her voice breaking. "His name is Lucas." The boy's small fingers curled weakly around his grandfather's hand, and Mr. Sterling wept openly. "My grandson," he declared hoarsely, "my blood, my heir. Forgive me for believing his lies." In that instant, everything changed. Without hesitation, Mr. Sterling gathered mother and child into his arms, shielding them beneath his coat, as though nothing else in the world mattered. He led them to the waiting car, his voice firm with resolve. "You will never suffer another night like this, not while I live." And so, as the storm raged on outside, Sofia and Lucas were driven away from the darkness of the bridge and into the light of a new destiny. The gates of the Sterling mansion, opening wide to welcome them home. For days, rumors rippled quietly through the Sterling household. Whispers of Sofia's miraculous return and the existence of a hidden heir stirred curiosity and unease. Yet Mr. Sterling revealed nothing, choosing instead to prepare the stage for a reckoning that no one would ever forget. He arranged a lakeside villa for Sofia and Lucas, a sanctuary of peace and safety, where for the first time in years, Sofia could sleep without fear. But peace alone was not enough. The truth had to be brought into the light, and the lies that had nearly destroyed Sofia had to be torn apart before witnesses. And so, Mr. Sterling planned a grand banquet. Invitations were sent to every influential figure in his circle: business partners, old friends, extended family. Among the names on the guest list were Mark and Julia. Ignorant of the storm that awaited them, the night of the banquet arrived. Crystal chandeliers bathed the great hall in golden light. A long table stretched the length of the room, adorned with silverware and flowers. Guests mingled, glasses clinking, laughter echoing beneath the high ceiling. Mark, confident and smug in Julia's company, strutted through the crowd as if he were already master of the house. But as the evening reached its height, the atmosphere shifted. Mr. Sterling rose from his seat at the head of the table, his face grave, his presence commanding silence. One by one, conversations died away until only the sound of the crackling fireplace remained. "Tonight," Mr. Sterling began, his voice deep and resonant, "I have gathered you all not merely to dine, but to witness the truth." Murmurs swept through the hall. Mark's brow furrowed. Julia's fingers tightened nervously on her wineglass. Then, at Mr. Sterling's signal, the doors at the far end of the hall opened. All eyes turned as Sofia stepped into the room, dressed simply yet radiantly, with Lucas clutching her hand. Gasps erupted across the hall. Some guests covered their mouths in shock. Others exchanged bewildered glances. Mark's face drained of color. His fork clattered against his plate as he half rose from his seat. "Impossible," he whispered. Julia's eyes widened in terror, her composure shattering. Mr. Sterling's voice thundered through the silence. "Sofia is not dead. She was never dead. She was abandoned, cast aside, and slandered by the lies of my own son." The room fell into stunned silence. Some guests stared at Mark in disbelief, others at Sofia with pity and admiration. Mr. Sterling's gaze shifted to Lucas, who clung to Sofia's skirt. His voice softened, but carried even greater weight. "And this child Lucas's my grandson, my blood, the rightful heir of the Sterling family. No lies can erase the truth written in his eyes." The declaration crashed like thunder over the gathering. Mark's mask of arrogance crumbled. Julia's hands shook so violently that her wine spilled across the tablecloth, a crimson stain spreading like guilt itself. Whispers filled the room: condemnation, outrage, disgust. The guests looked at Mark not as the heir he had claimed to be, but as a fraud, a man who had buried his wife in lies to seize a false throne. Mark stammered, "Father, you don't understand. She was enough." Mr. Sterling roared, slamming his hand against the table. The force of his voice silenced every murmur. His eyes blazed with righteous fury as he turned on his son. You deceived me. You deceived this family. You deceived the world. Tonight, your mask is broken. Mark's knees weakened. Julia clutched his arm, but her own face betrayed nothing but shame. Before the eyes of everyone who mattered, they were utterly destroyed, stripped of dignity, power, and the illusion of honor. N. As the banquet hall echoed with the weight of truth, Sofia stood tall at the center, no longer a forgotten woman in rags beneath a bridge, but the mother of the rightful heir vindicated at last. The banquet ended not with celebration, but with judgment. As the final words of truth echoed through the hall, Mr. Sterling rose to his full height, his decision unshakable. From this moment forward, he declared, his voice carrying the weight of iron, Mark Sterling is no longer my son. Julia is no longer a daughter-in-law of this house. You are both cast out, stripped of name, title, and inheritance. The decree struck like a hammer. Guests looked on in stunned silence as Mark staggered back, his face twisted with disbelief. Julia clutched his arm desperately, but there was no sympathy in the eyes around them. Once envied, once admired, they were now disgraced, exposed as liars and opportunists. Security escorted them out into the night, their luxury reduced to nothing. For the first time, Mark tasted the bitterness of the emptiness he had forced upon Sofia years before. The irony was merciless. The son who had schemed for power lost everything, while the woman he had betrayed rose from the ashes. Inside the mansion, Mr. Sterling turned to Sofia. His stern expression softened, and for the first time in years, he embraced her like the daughter he had always wished she could be. Tears filled his eyes as he knelt before little Lucas. "My grandson," he whispered, his voice trembling with both sorrow and joy. "From this day on, you will never know hunger, nor cold, nor shame. You are a Sterling by blood, by truth, by destiny." From that moment, life changed forever. Sofia and Lucas moved into the Sterling estate, not as outcasts, but as the rightful heirs. Mr. Sterling publicly announced the restoration of Sofia's honor, ensuring that no shadow of scandal could touch her again. Business partners, once misled by Mark's lies, now rallied behind her, offering respect and admiration. The household soon reflected her quiet strength. Sofia, no longer the broken woman beneath the bridge, became the matriarch of the family, respected, dignified, and unyielding in her devotion to her son. She managed the estate with wisdom, balancing compassion with firmness, transforming the mansion into a home filled with warmth rather than deceit. As the years passed, Lucas thrived under her care and the guidance of his grandfather. He grew into a young man of honor and intelligence, embodying the resilience of his mother and the legacy of his family name. He carried the Sterling name not as a burden, but as a badge of pride, one earned through truth, not stolen by lies. Those scars of the past remained etched in Sofia's heart. They became reminders of her strength. The nights of cold and hunger under the bridge were no longer chains of pain, but stepping stones to a destiny fulfilled. She had fought through betrayal, humiliation, and despair, and in the end, she had secured a safe and prosperous future for her son. And in the quiet of the Sterling estate, Sofia often looked at Lucas with a smile, whispering words only he could hear. "You are my reason for everything. And now, the world is finally yours."